AskReddit user Nightfall0 asks, doctors of Reddit, what patient made you go how the fuck are you even alive? We had a guy with a major aortic dissection one night. From the bedside ultrasound, he looked like he had already bled out. He had some chest pain, but he was alert and oriented, and we were shocked he was even still alive. He absolutely shouldn't have been with how much blood we saw, and the size of the dissection. We called the surgeon in, who was really blunt, and explained to the guy he was probably going to die in surgery. He was a young guy, like late 40s, he was on a business trip, and it was completely unexpected. He kept trying to call his wife, but it was like 2 AM and she wasn't answering. He just wanted to talk and tell her goodbye. It was actually pretty devastating to watch. Meanwhile he's so coherent and alert, as if he isn't actively bleeding out and dying. Most patients we would get in the same situation wouldn't be conscious, or would already be dead. They swooped him off to surgery, before he could contact his wife, and the dude lived. Remembering that story got me through a lot of tough years in the ER, because I think it just reminded me that hope and good outcomes are still out there. My favorite bit about this story is you called someone in their late 40s a young guy. As feel good as this story is, you've just made a bunch of other random people very happy. Imagine my surprise at learning that at 34 I'm not old enough to be considered a young guy yet. Your 30s are definitely your late teens of adulthood. Enjoyed, my friend. Lady in her mid-30s was in the clinic for a 1-week follow-up post-foot amputation, diabetes. She was admitted straight from the clinic because her blood glucose was 600 mg/dl, normal is 80 to 120, and the wound was severely infected. We used super concentrated doses of insulin to bring it back to the 200s. She was on strict diet restrictions and we couldn't figure out how it wouldn't drop any lower than 250. Turns out her kids, teens, had been sneaking giant 64-ounce sodas and candy bars into the hospital, literally 1 week after we chopped her foot off, because of uncontrolled diabetes. Not exactly a case of how the fuck did you survive that trauma/disease, but how the fuck do you even function on your own? My wife's father died due to diabetes complications. He'd been in and out of the hospital for several years. He went in on a Friday, they amputated toes on Sunday, he was dead on Monday. Nobody was prepared, but nobody was surprised either. When we went to his apartment to clean it out, and there was candy everywhere. Under couch cushions, pillows, in his bed, in all of the cupboards. I have a sweet tooth and I can't imagine wanting this much candy. The man killed himself. I have gotten my sign to stop. I like my toes and my life, and have a huge history of family with diabetes. My mom's a doctor. I asked her about this when it came up on Reddit. When my mom was in her IQ cycle during internship, man with police officers behind him came in the IQ. The man was perfectly fine and walking, so my mom and her colleagues were confused. The officers showed them a picture of a crumpled metal piece, which was a car. It didn't look like a car at all, just metal trash. The officers told my mom and her colleagues that they rescued the patient from the car, which was lit on fire only a few seconds after they rescued him. The patient didn't have a single scar on him, was perfectly fine, and got his name around the hospital for being immortal. My siblings and I all walked away from a car crash where our hatchback flipped upside down and backwards on the highway. Car was totaled. Ambulance guys couldn't believe we'd walked out of it. Seatbelts save lives. My mom and my sister did the same thing, in a car that was over 10 years old. My mom had the satisfaction of getting out of the car and screaming bloody murder at the teenager who blew through the stop sign and T-boned them. That kid got a double whammy of thinking she'd killed people and then getting yelled at by a crazy person. My dad is 87. He had prostate, liver, bowel, colon, and skin cancer. For the skin cancer he had lots of reconstructive surgeries, his whole tibia region and the back of his hands. Every year he has to have at least one skin lesion removed. He had a couple of heart attacks and then a sextuple bypass surgery. He also had a big pneumonia, a huge abscess and a small stroke. His doctor wants to see him every 6 months. I think just to be amazed that he's still walking around. If I were a doctor or scientist every 6 months, I'd want to see this guy weekly so I could study him and give other people his immortality. I dunno man, if immortality comes with those side effects, I might pass. Obligatory not a doctor, but my daddy's, and he liked to tell us about the crazy shit he saw. This post made me think of one of those in particular. Huge guy, Linebacker build, came into the trauma ward with a gunshot, wound dead center of the chest. He could breathe fine, and he had a pulse. So they did a chest X-ray, and found that the bullet had spent all its energy getting through this guy's sternum, and was just resting on his pericardium. Strong bones. Natural armor. You think he still qualifies for r/never broke bone? No, that is definitely a broken bone.